Right, hi, I'm Michael Borgelt here with the crazy optimizer, Abdul, and we're going to go through another site and kind of just talk about how we optimized it, a couple tools that we used, and the process. A little background about us. I'm the founder and owner of 51 Blocks and the WP Help. Abdul has been doing optimization for a long time, but I'll let him give a little bit of his background and we'll kind of go from there.
Hi, thank you, Michael. So, yep, I think for me, I have been a digital marketer for like 15 years now. So, started with marketing, ended up doing optimization and all that as well, because being a marketer for so long, I know how important speed is for websites, how important it is to rank, or how important it is to give a good experience to customers. So, that's where I entered into the optimization space. And I think right now, what things we're doing with WP Help, that's what we're doing. We're focusing on helping e-commerce businesses, helping small businesses, even helping agencies optimize their websites so they get a better performance, a better user experience, and even in certain cases, better rankings as well on Google.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what we've seen. We've seen an increase between 18 and 40% in conversions, and we do see an increase in overall users to the site. Not organic necessarily, but we have seen rankings increase, but total users and bounce rates have dropped as well. So all those metrics you're kind of looking for in regards to search engine marketing or even presenting to clients. These are the types of things. But the most, I think, I guess, shocking thing, I think last week we had somebody said, what did they say? That something like, how is this possible? Yeah, how is this possible? How is this possible is what somebody is saying now. So it's pretty fun to get those types of responses. I'll just quickly talk about this site, and then Abdul, have you talk a little bit about it. This is Justice, Florida. It's a client that came to us, a law site. Performance before on GTMetrix performance was 53%. Both scores of E, 53% for page score, and Y slow was 55, a load time of 3.2 seconds. So not too bad in regards to load time, and a number of requests, 111. And after I handed it over to the crazy optimizer and he did his thing, we got a results of the following, which is pretty incredible, right? Page speed score of 100 and a Y slow score of 98, with a load time of 7.7 seconds, so 700 milliseconds. So that's pretty incredible with a number of requests of 19. So that's let's just talk a little bit about that. So how are we able to reduce, because I think it really comes down to the number of requests, which then fully affect the load time, which obviously runs the scores for the page speed scores. So talk about how we're able to reduce the number of requests and kind of go from there.
Okay, I think, like you said rightly, that number of requests have a very direct impact on the load time and on certain elements of the page speed scores as well. Because the more requests it takes to the browser has to make to get a page loaded, the more time it will take. And even a single request, if it gets blocked, like if it's going to an external site or somewhere, and it takes time, it will take the whole load time off. So mostly the number of requests that we reduce are the internal requests, because I think developers, especially, they do a very good job making websites. But when it comes to optimizations, because with WordPress, you use a lot of plugins, you use a lot of different things to make things work, right? So each plugin or each theme that you use or each feature that you build into it, there's a big chance that you're using a separate CSS file for that. You're using a separate JavaScript file for that. So that starts becoming a lot of files that have to be loaded. So one of the key things that we do is we minify the files, which is a standard thing. We reduce the white space, we reduce the things that are unnecessary, and we also combine them. So we try to make sure that we combine all the files that can be combined, because sometimes some files you cannot combine, because ideally this request should be 1 or 5, something like that. But the reason it's 19 or maybe in the 20 ranges is because we cannot combine all files, because certain files need to be loaded on their own to make sure they keep working. But we make sure that we combine all the files, all the CSS files that can be combined, JavaScript files. So the browser is doing just one request instead of doing like 30 requests for the same 30 files. Everything is coming to it in one go. So that is how we reduce the requests, and that directly affects the page size as well and the load time as well.
Yeah, I guess I should have mentioned that as well, right? The page speed, the page load is 5 megabytes, 5.5 megabytes here, and 300 kilobytes here. So pretty amazing there. So you mentioned two things I just kind of want to dive into as you were talking there. One was minification. Obviously, a lot of these caching tools have minification. Why don't you talk a little bit about what minification is and what it does to the website in order to performance? That would be one. And then I want to talk after that a little bit about load time and how different tools measure load time. Like we've seen even internal tools that we're using identifying different load times. So let's talk a little bit about those two things. So minification to start, what is it? And how are we able to, I guess, manipulate it? So
Okay, I think in very simple terms, minification is removing all the white space that's there, all the beautification things, all the comments that are added to a file, right? Because they are needed for humans. Like when I'm reading a code, like a file of code, or any good developer is writing it, they make sure there's a lot of white space there. It's easily understandable. There are a lot of comments there to make sure people understand what the code is doing, but they're not needed for the browser to execute the code. So one of the key things in a very simple terms that are done is removing all these white spaces and all these comments that are like redundant data that's in the file. So it's removed. So like you said, most caching plugins do that because that is like caching or optimization 101. If you have a file, because you can reduce the size a lot, especially with large CSS files, especially if you have a very large theme that's being run, you have an e-commerce website, there's a chance that your CSS files will be huge because of all the comments that are there, all the white spaces that are there. So just removing that reduces the number of the size as well and the number of lines and everything. So the browser reads it faster. It doesn't take as much time to read it and reduces the page size. So that reduces the page load time.
So yeah, exactly. I think that's the key thing with minification. When we sometimes write code, we make it look pretty, right? It's got these different blocks and all these different things. It's very, very readable. But then for search engines, they don't want all this extra space, which adds page size, right? And then minification, that's why we're able to reduce the page size overall.
Yep. And the thing is that like you can minify HTML as well, you can minify CSS as well, and you can minify JavaScript as well. HTML and CSS are the simpler parts of minification because it's normally removing the comments, it's removing the white spaces. When it comes to JavaScript, that's where a certain tricky aspects start coming in for minification. So it's like minification is not something for most websites. It's like, okay, it's simple. You can just do it and it works. But for a lot of websites, especially when it's e-commerce, or especially if they're very custom development done to them, minification is also like some trial and error process involved in that because certain types of minification, especially for JavaScript or even CSS, change the behavior of the website. So I think that is one thing for us which we do whenever we optimize a website is once we optimize it, we make sure it's working. We do a type of functional testing as well because you don't know, because minification there you have allowed a system to optimize your code, right? So it's very important to make sure that you check it. You check the whole website after that to make sure everything is working as it should. Because certain times, especially when it comes, if it's a very custom developed website, there are chances that something is not performing as it should.
And I would even say, even not even custom sites sometimes. I remember before I had the crazy optimizer on my team, I would go in and use WP Rocket or W3C and check minification and through JavaScript or these other things, and all of a sudden I would break sites and I didn't necessarily know why, right? So I'd have to go and roll back and kind of, like you said, a little trial and error just to figure out what I was breaking or not. Now, I think we spend a little bit of more time, optimizing the site in regards to JavaScript and making sure that we're not affecting the site and making sure it's still performing at the same level that it was. And this one actually had a section like that, the review section, that we had to kind of work through to get it to work properly. If you remember when we did this, that we actually had to do some, like, I don't know if it's custom coding, but some additional testing to make sure that it launched properly. So load time, let's talk about load time. Obviously that's very important. That's, one of the things when we present to clients or agencies that we talk about of how we're reducing load time, and, Google's coming out and alerting people of slow loading sites and how it's measured differently, even within tools that people use, right? Like, and I guess quickly, I'll just show you before we get too far down that, because a lot of people do use Google Page Speed and GTMetrix, two different tools people use. There's hundreds of tools out there. Ping them. other types of testing tools that people use to measure speed. Here you can see prior this site, the justiceflorida.com, the mobile score was a 14 and the desktop score was a 54. And then afterwards, after our optimization, was a 99 and 100, right? We're usually able to get a little bit better scores almost always on desktop just because mobile is a little bit more tricky. But let's talk a little bit about, like I said, the load time and how people measure it differently. And if you can just elaborate on that.
Okay, so one of the things that the biggest difference in tools is because definitely each tool has its own algorithm, right? Like GTmetrix
has its own what?
Algorithm of when how they're measuring the website, when do they take the cutoff, like are they looking at DOM loaded, DOM finished, what are they looking at? So
DOM load or DOM finish can be a big thing that people are using to measure.
Yes, because they have first contentful, like with GTmetrix, because it's kind of a baseline, it's like it's a tool that everyone knows and everyone uses, so that's a tool that we rely on, that's where we create our baselines on. But like there are certain tools where I've seen that the numbers, especially the load time, when you talk about page speed score, because that's a Google's algorithm, so that you'll always find it very similar to each tool. Like there might be a 1 or 2 point difference, but you'll always find like it's very similar. The only main difference starts coming in when you start talking about the load time, because the way we optimize it, we remove render blocking scripts. That's the biggest difference that we get. We remove render blocking scripts. We have a few small customizations done in the tool that we do not load the non-essential scripts as well, because there are certain scripts on a page which do not need to be loaded unless the user actually starts browsing the page. So that keeps the load off our servers as well, and that also serves the website fast as well. Then we also lazy load the images, that we don't load the images, like we only load this, our system only loads the images on the fold. Any images that are under the fold, they get loaded when people start scrolling down. So now what happens is certain tools have different ways of measuring that. Certain tools, like I think we were talking about another tool yesterday as well, that was waiting for everything to load. So that was taking up, like giving us wrong scores. So that's a wrong score. We cannot rely on that, because that's not how a user will see the tool, because we instructed a system to not load things, so it will just take forever to load them, right? Yeah. Because the tool is waiting for them to load while we are not loading them. So then it comes up like if a website is giving us 1 second load time, on that tool it might come 10 seconds because it just kept waiting for it to load. So I think GTmetrix, in my experience, has been one of the good ones. Like the algorithm that they use, the way they measure it, it's very similar to a normal user, a real user. So it doesn't feel like a tool measuring it. It's a very, like if you go to a website, the way you'll start using it, that's how GTmetrix uses it. Because for you, what's important as a visitor is that once you click on a website and it's loaded, right? You don't, for you, what's inside, what's underneath, the scroll doesn't matter for you. So you only need that once you start scrolling down. And by the time you start scrolling down, everything would be ready there as well. So one of the biggest impact areas where we get a good page speed score as well and page load time is that we focus on these things. We focus on this scripts optimization mainly, making sure the scripts are loaded at the right time, the images are loaded at the right time. We do not load everything up front and keep the user waiting for 5 seconds, 8 seconds for everything to load. When they just need the main areas, the main first fold to start looking at the website.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. There's no reason to have to affect the page speed scores waiting on things that are loading that are not going to be viewed and may not be viewed at all by somebody, right, if they don't scroll. So that's kind of that's a great point, and how load times vary so significantly based on the tool you're using. That's why it's always, we use GTmetrix and Google Page Speed scores because those are probably the two most recognizable ones in the industry and that most people use. We have no problem testing against other tools as well. We'll see the similar results as long as they understand that, at what point are you stop counting the load time, right? Now, we're only trying to do that through certain, aspects of the site. So is there anything else you want to cover today, or should we just kind of leave it at that and go forward?
I think we last video was also extensive. So I think in this one, I think there's just few things that if you can go to the before result.
Yeah.
Like you see now, when people look at this, there are a lot of insights that you're getting, right? It's like it's telling you like the key for optimization is making sure that these best practices are followed. These are kind of best practices, I would say. Like Google is telling you, or Wiselo is telling you that what you need to do to get a good score. And when you do these things, it will directly affect the page load time. So like these things, there are certain areas where page load time is affected by the type of servers that you have, the type of, because you can be with a very bad host, right? Which will, even if you do everything, complete everything here, but the servers you're on are very slow or very loaded. Like there's a lot of people on that, so that will definitely, you cannot improve that, which is a difference that we have, that the servers that we use are like state of the art. We are in good data centers. We are using Amazon CDN, so we make sure that the sites, like from the server side of stuff, we have all of our customers covered, that there's no load on the servers. There's like your website, when a visitor comes to your website, they don't have to wait on other websites or other PHP workers to complete their work, because that's a big difference. Like in managed hosting, many hosts are limiting PHP workers, that limit you to 2 workers or 4 workers. Right now, we do not have such hard limits. We do have some soft limits, but they are like at 12, 16, 18, like at the very higher side, where a normal website won't even reach that. But they're just there to make sure that not like we control our server resources as well. But we are very generous when it comes to PHP workers. So that's also a big thing when you have the people coming to your website, that actually the server resources, the PHP is available for your visitors request to get executed. Because if they keep waiting on that, then even if you do all these things, complete them, the page load time will increase. Everything will increase, because you will be waiting on the server to in the queue to get your request served. So I think for us, like it's very important to, like for me and you in WP Help, that we manage both sides. We manage the website's optimization as well, and we manage our servers well as well. We make sure that our stack is very optimized. So I think both these things combined play a very big role in a page load time, because I think, yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I actually think you just created the content for our next 3 videos. I think what we should do is really dive into, some of these results and what they mean and how to fix them. And then, showing, how we're able to address them through our technology stack that we use. And I think we could, what does it mean to optimize images or reduce servers, serve scaled images? You talked about that, before, where, they load a huge 1,000 by 1,500 and it only needs to be 274 by 114 or 411, right? And that's just a simple optimization that needs to happen, but a lot of developers don't do that. And I mean, there's all kinds as you go through this list, right?
Not a lot of developers in this as well, because what happens is when you're writing blog posts or you're writing a new thing, as a normal business owner, as a blogger who's not very technical, what you normally tend to do is, like, even if your image, your image size is like, let's say 500 by 500, you'll get a very good, nice looking image from some Shutterstock or a picture that you took, and you'll upload it completely. Now you don't need that image there, because you now loaded like a 6 MB image where you just need like a few KBs for that. And also those images are very high quality, so there's a lot of optimization room as well. So like I think we've talked about this, as this served scale images is one of the biggest impacts. Like I've seen it have a very big impact on load time as well, and it's a very big factor in page speed scores as well, because you need to load images as per the size that you want them, and there are tools to do that. They're like, I think in the last video we mentioned Short Pixel. We made a shout out to Google. Like they're doing a very good job at that. That their plugin, it does this optimization of images as well. It optimizes your images so they're compressed, and it also loads scaled images. So it doesn't load the full size image. It loads the scaled image of the size that it needs. And they also add a CDN to it. So like they cover all that part like to it. So these guys are doing a very good job, and like they can get you like just these 2 points can be solved by them. So I think the idea here is knowing which things solve which points, like how do you get, I think it's a good idea to talk on each of these points in later videos of how people can solve them and like how much they impact on load time. And all these things are impacting your page speed score as well and your load time both.
Yeah, I think that's a great next, like I said, 3 videos. We'll walk through each of these, dive into the most common areas. You always see serve scaled images. You always see optimized images. You always see defer parsing of JavaScript. You always see those
these are
3
not standard things.
Yep, and then minimize redirects. Most of those 4 things are always there. And same with Wiselo, right? It's usually, hey, use a CDN, minify JavaScript, avoid redirects, and add expires, right? Most of the time, those are the most common ones that are added. Sometimes compression's in there because people haven't enabled, compression or things like that. And then we'll briefly talk about like what the waterfall does and kind of look through that. So people can, maybe address some of these issues to speed up their sites as Google's starting to roll out the warnings of slow page speed. So we're going to keep this one a little shorter than the last one. Thank you for joining me again, Abdul. We'll come back next week and we'll talk about the page speed and why slow scores. And or we'll start with page speed first and just dive into that. And it'll be hopefully a 10 or 15-minute video just talking a little bit about those items. But once again, I'm Michael. That's Abdul, the crazy optimizer who knows the ins and outs of all this stuff. We're from 51 Blocks and WP Help. If you need any help with your website loading time and you really want to have truly managed WordPress help, please give us a call. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.